Can everyone hear me? All right, good morning, everyone. Ms. Bunch, I thank you for the opportunity for allowing Tangipahoa Parish to share what we've done. I want to introduce my counterpart, Mr. Gary Porter. I'm the Assistant Superintendent in Tangipahoa Parish, and my role is to oversee student services and transportation. However, Mr. Gary Porter is the Director of Student Services, so him and his team are really responsible for all the work that Tangipahoa has done in the last 3 years. So I'm gonna give him an opportunity just to introduce himself, and then we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone, and I thank you again, Ms. Bunch, for the opportunity. Thank Dr. Hurst for inviting me to participate this morning as well. And I do work as a Director of Student Services here in Tangi, and just looking forward to sharing this morning and working with everyone on the call.
Okay, so with that being said, what we're going to do is just give you an overview of the last 3 years of Tangipahoa Parish, how we got to where we are today. We did start out with a alternative school. It is a program now, but that didn't happen overnight. So what you're going to see in our short presentation is how we began and how we've ended up so far. And we're still, this is a fluid transition. We're still making changes based off the data that we see. Can anyone see the slides? So here's our superintendent, Ms. Melissa Stilley. She is the real catalyst behind all this work, because I'm saying that because it was important to her. So if it's not important to your leadership, to your superintendent, and to your board, then we know how that goes. It's just something that trickles down as something that we need to do just because. But Ms. Stilley, when she first came in 3 years ago, she said, this is important to me, this is important to the community, this is important to the students. So I want to see drastic and strategic changes to improve our discipline, our student code of conduct in our schools, and our AE program. Just to give you a little overview of Tangipahoa Parish, we are a C district. We had high hopes prior to the pandemic of going up to a B based on all the data that we were seeing. We have roughly 1,200 teachers, close to 20,000 students. And our parish is kind of more, it's rural and somewhat urban. So we have both ends of that spectrum. So here's a backstory of our AE program. 3 years ago, before our superintendent came, we had a different administration. They were more into punitive, zero tolerance. So our AE program was a dumping ground for employees and students. And I'm gonna elaborate on that, but I know you know what I mean. We sent the worst students there with the worst employees and the worst administration. So even if you were a teacher, you didn't work out at a school, we didn't do our job as transition you out of the education or out of our system. We just sent you to the alternative school with the worst students. If you were an administrator and you were not performing well at your school, you were sent to the alternative school. So it seemed like it was a punishment for teachers, students, and administration. And if you put all those three dynamics in one school, what do you get? Higher recidivism rate, inequitable academic programs, no social and emotional supports. Everything was punitive rather than restorative, and it was a bottom-up leadership style. So what I mean by that is the principals in the district, we have 32 schools, they pretty much called the shots of what happened at the alternative school and when kids went and when they came back. So, and the previous administration at the central office allowed that to happen. So that was the old way of thinking. Whatever the principal wanted, regardless if they had services for the students at the school or provided interventions, if the principal said, I wanted this kid gone, regardless of what they did, the kid was going to the alternative school. Then I'm gonna let Mr. Porter elaborate on this. We had a change in leadership with Ms. Stilley came in.
So when the new leadership came in, one thing that was important to her, as Dr. Hurst mentioned, some goals that she set, of course, when she looked at our data, you know, we were kind of really high with respect to suspensions and expulsions. And then particularly, you know, just being honest when we looked at our data, just with respect to minority students. So one of the things in the overhaul process the superintendent did along with the district leadership team was to establish some core values. And with these core values, and they are simply be respectful, be compassionate, and be great, those core values kind of are the driving force behind all the work that we do, the decisions that we make with respect to students and student outcomes, So just establishing those core values was really, really critical for us. And again, the goals are incorporated in the core values to reduce out-of-school suspensions, to reduce chronic absenteeism, because that was a humongous issue, and then to just create a safe environment for all. So those core values and establishing those was very important to the work that we were doing with changing what needed to be changed here in the district.
So in order to change our AE program, we realized that we had to change our policies, because we could have changed the leadership, we could have changed the teachers, we could have went from a school to a program, but we still had policies that gave principals and schools the ability, autonomy, just to get rid of students. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and how we accomplished that. We had open and honest conversations with all stakeholders to gather meaningful input about equity in our policies. So to give you a frame of reference, our old policies were basically zero tolerance, but they didn't say zero tolerance. So if you did this, you got this automatically. If you did it again, the punishment went from 1 day to 3 days. If you did it again, it went from 3 days to 5 days. So it was just automatic. Schools had no autonomy to determine whether, okay, this situation is different from the last, so I may need to treat this one differently as opposed to the way we treated it with this other student based off the circumstances and the investigation in the background. So, and we spoke with all stakeholders. When I say that, the teachers union, our school board, we had parents come in, we had community leaders come in, and we just had open and honest conversations of how they felt about how our policies were treating Black and brown students. And we got meaningful insight off that. And because of that, we revised our whole student code of conduct handbook. And we realized in doing that, it took out a lot of the practices we had that automatically sent students to the alternative school, if you get my drift. So that was the reason we felt we needed to start there, because we could have changed the program, but we still had practices that automatically sent kids to the alternative setting. And that was a problem we had at the district level that we needed to change. So in 2018 and 19, that's what we did. We assessed the feedback, revised our student code of conduct handbook, and we collaborated with all departments. Transportation, because we have bus issues, academics, but guess what? Academics have to really support our AE program. So we started having conversations with them, even down to food service. We included every department in the district in help revitalizing our student code of conduct and our AE program. So in 2019 and 2020 was the implementation phase. It was gradual, clear, concise communication. We were open and upfront about everything. We told our stakeholders it's a fluid plan. Just because we started does not mean we can't change things as we see that things need to be changed. And we welcome constructive criticism. We did not close the door to those individuals who constantly criticized what we were doing. We welcomed it. We had training, and more training. We had to have a mindset change of our administrators, of our teachers. That's one reason we reached out to our union about this big change we were about to make, because we knew once the teachers saw that we was going to have a discipline policy that was more restorative in their mindset, we're letting kids get away with murder. No, we're trying to provide service for students to keep them in school. And we had to make it clear that we're talking about minor stuff. Of course, when you have your sex, your drugs, your weapons, those are major, so we're going to deal with those appropriately. We implemented the plan, and we redesigned the alternative education program. It was a 2 to 3 year process, and today, this is what our program looks like. So basically, students went there, they attended the school. It was basically a babysitting, holding cell for students until they finished their time. No real services in place, no education going on, and that's what it was. And the principal decided at a certain point she wanted to send the kid back. The kid went back. The principal at the school that the kid was going back didn't like it. Then they called the old superintendent. The old superintendent sent them back. So that's where we were. So where we are now is, Mr. Porter, you want to kind of elaborate on where we are now?
Yeah, and so even going back, Dr. Hurst, just to that last slide, I just want to mention an important nugget. You know, going back to the piece where we've had the honest conversations, and I'll just tell you guys on the call that was probably one of the most challenging pieces of this transition, was to take an honest look at what we were doing, you know, because everybody owns who they are. We own our practices. and you know, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of the slides, but you know, the Discipline Revolution project that we're engaged in, you know, having a fresh set of eyes come in and take a look at what we're doing and giving us that honest feedback, it was tough. And also, you know, as a former principal in this district, you know, I had to really do self-reflection because I was probably in that old mindset, like, let's get this kid off the island. If a kid is in my building, he's continuing to get everybody problems, you know, I'm guilty. So you have to kind of, you know, really look at that self-assessment piece in this process because it is very challenging. So now, you know, with the transition that has occurred, the goal, Dr. Hurst mentioned the policies, you know, we implemented more practices that were restorative. We've engaged in introducing a curriculum for social emotional learning. We ourselves, you know, took training. We got exposed to the trust-based training and all those things that helped us to transition from the punitive mindset more to the restorative mindset.
So the 6-week program that we have now is 2 phases at the alternative school. So when a student is assigned to the alternative education program, I keep saying school, but it's a program. When they immediately come in, they have a transition and support plan put in place. The parent is involved. They are assigned a support team at the school. They have a pre-test on the curriculum. They are introduced to the SEL curriculum, and it's all about developing relationships with everyone there. They analyze the student comprehensive report and determine supports that student needs individually. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not this one program that everybody come in and everybody get the same dosage of medicine. Each student has their own plan. They are assigned a mentor. One thing that we did when we brought in a new leader, we allowed that leader to bring in their staff. We didn't send staff over there. We said, no, pick your staff that's going to help you be successful, because we want you to be successful. So I'm not going to send a teacher who's struggling at this school to come and work with you. No, you pick who you think is going to help you improve the outcomes at this school. So, and that's what we allow. You have to allow them to do that. We also said, what supports you need? What do you think you need? You let us know, and we're going to get them to you. How we're going to pay for it, we'll figure that out later, but you just tell us what you need and tell us your plan, and we collaborated on the plan. So it wasn't like the administrator was solo. We collaborated throughout the process. So we added mentors to the school. These mentors would follow the students at the school. Even when they went back to their zone school, the mentors would follow them back to their zone school and meet with them weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the level of supports that student need. At a mid-program check, probably about 3 weeks, they will look at where the kid is progressing. And then in the exit process, at the end of the 6 week, if the students met all the guidelines to be transitioned back to their regular school, they had to do a presentation of everything that they have accomplished in a 6 week program and a post-test. And they will present in front of community members or someone from their school, their parents, explaining what they have learned from the program, how they have transitioned, how they understood what got them there. So it's a whole rubric that they are each evaluator is given to assess the student. But they work with the student throughout those 6 weeks to get to that point. If needed, a behavior plan is developed to accompany the student back to the school. And when they go back to the school, the mentors or someone from the administration from the school will meet with the school to say, hey, this is what Johnny needs. This is how he was successful at the AE program. Let's see if we can continue these supports. And they monitor that student for about 3-6 weeks, depending on the level of need. And eventually they take their hands off and let them go on and be successful. And in phase 2, that's the readjustment period at the home-based school when the mentors follow them back. So in some of the things that the district did, we created an equitable student code of conduct. We went from punitive to more restorative. We had training on bullying investigations, even though you would think that your principals and your APs know the proper protocols. We found that a lot of times they didn't, which a lot of times unfairly punished students. We had a big push for positive behavior intervention and support. We developed district and school handle with care teams to make sure when students get engaged in conflicts that we properly handle those students with the proper training and care. So we trained all our administration in handle with care, non-negotiable. And in doing that, we have prevented a lot of fights that would have sent a lot of students to the AE site. Everyone got trained in ACEs and TBRI. We trained our teachers in de-escalation strategies instead of just sitting there not saying anything, but what to say, how to say it, when to engage, when not to engage. We had training in that for all our staff and our administration. We hired 2 social skills coaches. So when they see students headed towards that threshold, the schools can recommend a social skills coach to come in and work with that student at the school site. Now, we're talking about things that we did to prevent students from going to the AE site. We developed a fight assessment protocol. Let me explain that. So we have our fair share of community fights that make it to the campus, involving 3, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes we had one fight a couple years ago with 17 students, all stem from the community. What this fight assessment protocol allowed us to do is a little bit more work, but in the old system, all 17 students are going to the alternative school, regardless of if you push somebody off you, if you were identified as involved, you went to the AE program. But with the fight assessment protocol, each student is assessed in their involvement in the altercation. And it's a strict form that they follow. And if it determined that this student was engaged fully, then they get this set of punishment. If this student was not as engaged, and it's determined by a team, not one person, by a team of people, at least 2, then that student probably got 2 or 3 days or some in-school suspension. It all depended on the level of involvement. So I remember out of that fight of 17 kids, normally all 17 would have went, we probably sent about 6 because those were the real instigators. And the rest of them received some level of punishment, but they were not removed from the school campus.
And the thing that we do with respect to the protocols and the things that we put in place, we provide that ongoing professional development. We reach out to the schools, we assist them in utilizing these protocols. We give them an opportunity to tell us what they need from us to help support the work that they're doing. We survey them and we develop our ongoing professional development based on the things that they tell us that they need from us. So we're kind of like hands-on, in the trenches with them with this work. We're not just saying, here, go do this, but we are letting them know that we are hands-on and involved in this process as well, because it was a big transition for everybody on the campuses.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, when we, in the old regime, I'm saying regime, everybody got arrested. Every kid involved got arrested. So you're talking about 17 kids going to go to the juvenile court system, and 10 of them probably didn't have anything to do with it at that time, but got pulled into it, maybe because my cousin or my sister, or I was trying to break it up. We hear this all the time. I was trying to break it up and I got hit. So we assessed all of that, and we developed guidelines for engaging law enforcement. We had to get out the mindset of every time a kid fought, they had to go to jail. We got rid of that. Only the ones who are unruly or creating a safety concern to themselves or others, or just would not calm down and let the administration get control, was the ones that probably from at this point on that we have to engage the law enforcement, because we have to get the school back under control.
And in the development of those guidance documents, particularly the engagement for police officers, we worked with our community partner, TPSS, and we vetted what we developed with them so they can say, hey, this is good, this is not good, let's look at this, let's tweak this. So we utilize community partners and our stakeholders in a lot of what we're doing. And even, we have local attorneys as partners, and we kind of vet our policies through them so they can kind of give us the legal aspect and the feedback on what we're doing. So that was very, very helpful in just engaging our community stakeholders.
And to finish up, we identified 2 counselors to be trainers of restorative practices. So they are responsible for going to the schools and training a team. But to be honest, I think we've used more restorative practices between teachers and students than we have between students, believe it or not. And so that was very eye-opening. We developed student assistance teams. If you think of SBLC process, think of it the same aspect of the student assistance team. We involve all students, because there was a mindset that SBLC was just for SPED students. We had to change that mindset, say, no, it's for all students, academic and discipline. And here's the process we're going to go by to identify these students early so they don't get to the point where we have to send them to the AE site. So a lot of things we're doing are preventative. We're trying to do everything and put everything in place to prevent from sending students to our AE site. Therefore, we can have a program that really meet the needs of the students who are there. And
a big shift with the SAT process, minor infractions are what we really focus on. The superintendent was very clear that the big things are still the big things, and that, you know, nothing changes with those processes for the big infractions. But with the minor infractions, these are the things that we bring to the table through the SAT process. And here's the big shift that we made. So we have given principals the authority in their buildings as they work students through that SAT process with minor infractions. And after they have exhausted all of the measures, using all the interventions, pulling all the tricks out of the trick bag, then we give them the opportunity to say, hey, we are recommending this student have a change of placement, whether it's to the AE program, whether it's virtual learning. So we've kind of empowered them, but we also have a system of checks and balances in place that when they go through that process, it does get final approval from our office, but we have let the principals know, and they have been very, very clear with the parents, and that parental involvement piece with getting the parents involved in that process has gone a long way, because when it comes to the point, and I'll tell you that right now, we have not had any recommendations from principals, because we're taking care of business early on, and those behaviors that would eventually lead to expellable offenses, they're getting curtailed early on through interventions and through the intervention process, and that has been huge for us.
So as a result of the changes we've made from 1819 to 1920, we had a 1% decrease in our pre-K to 4. And by the way, we don't send any students in pre-K to 4 to our alternative setting. Non-negotiable. We find ways to keep those students in school. We rarely send a 5th grader on a case-by-case basis, but it's really geared towards our 6th through 12th grade. We had a 16% decrease in students that were suspended in our 5 through 12 from 18 and 19 to 19 and 20. So, and we were very excited about last year and getting the end result data, but then COVID hit and we all went home. So as of today, that's our data. Of course, I'm pretty sure everyone is experiencing this year, your discipline numbers are down because half your students are virtual. There's not a lot going on, social distancing. So students are having less opportunities to engage in that type of behavior. So how were we able to change mindsets? It started with our superintendent, tough conversations. We got everybody input that we can think of. We didn't leave nobody out. Utilize existing personnel. You gotta have the right people. You gotta put them in the right place. You can have the best program in the world, but if you don't have the right people and have them in the right place, it's not gonna work. Our federal programs director, the way we funded a lot of the things that we want to do, we became best friends with her. She know where all the title funds are. She know how much is left. She know what schools are not using them. And I called and say, look, this is what we want to do. That's how we hired our social skills coach. She said, Dr. Hurst, the schools are not utilizing the funds. I can give you the salaries for those 2 individuals. I need it. So that's how we got to adding those individuals. So in a nutshell, that's what Tangi did. And that was over a 2 to 3 year process, but we haven't stopped. We're still constantly assessing. Right now, because of COVID, all of our kids are basically in their regular school setting. We probably have 20 students at our alternative education program right now, and that's because of drugs or weapons. But other than that, that's what Tangi's done. So we do have a little breakout. I don't know if we can go in a breakout room, Ms. Bunch, or if you would just want to entertain questions in the chat box.